Hey there, it's Ken Colburn. I'm starting a new series. I'm calling it The Smartest People I Know because in this pandemic, there's a whole lot going on out there that we should really be sharing information and learning from the smartest people you know. So I'm going to kick it off with one of my old friends from the franchising world, Mr. David Barr, who has some very interesting connections and processes he's going through now that I thought would be really helpful for a lot of other people to hear about. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to me, David, about this insane world that we're finding ourselves in. But there are very specific things that small businesses should be looking at that we want to talk about. But let's first talk a little bit about who David Barr is and why I have you on my show.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. I would characterize myself, first of all, as a finance person turned operator turned strategist. I mention that because it gives a perspective maybe of some of the things we'll be speaking of. The primary parts of my career are really all consumer facing. I have been in and around franchising since 1991, in and around restaurants since 1991. I do both franchise restaurants and non-franchised, and I do franchise concepts that are not restaurants. And I do that internationally as well. So a perspective we'll talk about in a moment as it relates to the pandemic is that I'm on the board of directors at Domino's Pizza China. And I think that gives me also a unique perspective. But I think the reason Ken asked me to be on today is more recently, in the last 12 months, I have been the chairman of International Franchise Association. Just had stepped down from that role in late February when COVID-19 hit. And still leaned in along with International Franchise Association and worked extensively on the phones with Capitol Hill, that ranging from Treasury, Mnuchin's office, to the Senate, McConnell, Rubio, Collins' office, as well as others who were friendly to small business, and in addition, even White House conversations, all towards an effort towards influencing what has now become both known as the CARES Act as well as the payroll program protection loans, and trying to make sure those were available for small business. And all of my background kind of rolled up into that and being able to assist that association and leaning in to make sure we could influence it for a positive direction for those in small business.
So, I mean, needless to say, you are trying to impact the decisions being made in DC, which is great. I think that gives you a unique perspective to what's happening here. But you're also, basically, you've got all these operations of your own that you got to deal with that are going to be impacted by these things these decisions that are being made.
Correct. And in my consumer facing, I have restaurants today that are 100% closed, casual dining. I have restaurants that are running at about 30 to 40% revenue, those being more fast casual, non-drive-through. And then I have restaurants that are more quick service that have ranged anywhere from even to sales versus last year to 25% down. And then layered on top of that, a variety of franchise businesses in the health and beauty sector, ranging from women's eyelashes called Lash Lounge to Madison Reed hair salons, to City Row Fitness, to Title Boxing. I am either an investor or on the board of directors of all those, and 100% of those locations are completely shut down. And that's why in lobbying on Capitol Hill, we didn't necessarily lobby that this should be an act just for franchises. We lobbied that our entree into the door was, hey folks, you seem to race to big businesses, right? If we think of 08, it was a more big business bailout, but Main Street's getting hit here. And we know that 60% of all employment in the US is with small businesses, those businesses less than 500 employees. And so if Main Street's shut down, it's going to be really hard to ever get Delta Airlines or anybody else up and running.
So let's talk about these different programs. I know there's confusion from a lot of the discussions I've had with other small business owners about what these programs are, who qualifies, whatever. Let's start with just going down the list of the different programs that are currently out there.
Today, in large part, we're going to be focusing on the CARES Act and then an expansion of disaster loan recovery. So as I think of what's available for small businesses out there, I'd put it in three buckets. Let's talk federal government, which is going to be primarily this disaster loan recovery and the payroll program protection loans, or payroll protection program loans. And then we'll think of state governments and city governments. And then third, potentially some special grants out there. And I'll be glad to talk of all three, although I think the primary benefit or value add might be around looking at the federal government.
Yeah, I think I want to try to help people understand is it's in general, I think we have these placeholders that are being called these things, but obviously the devil's always in the details, and that's I think where most of the confusion is who qualifies for what under which scenario. So let's start with all of those small restaurants out there that basically closed way early before any of this stuff was even being talked about. They were just told you can't operate anymore, or you can only operate if you do takeout, which for a lot of business concepts, it's not going to work. Yeah. So they're basically gone. They had to furlough or lay off all their employees. What do you suggest people that are in that situation think about?
So first, there's two primary federal acts that people could look towards, and they both ride on the rails of Small Business Administration or SBA loan programs. The 7B program is in essence a disaster recovery loan program that some people hear, otherwise termed the EIDL loans. And then the 7A program is an expansion of the old 7A system, and it's otherwise known as the payroll protection now. So those are the two programs. The first one that was stood up was this disaster loan recovery. So for a disaster loan recovery, you need to show a need in a causation. So we have a cause, and we have to show damages. So we have a cause, which was the virus. We have to be able to show damages. In this case, you could show year over year lack of profitability, certainly if you closed. And then you need to show a need. And the need is that you can't get lending otherwise. In today's environment, you can't get lending otherwise. So one possibility is that. And what that loan looks like is it's a 30-year loan at 3.75% interest rate. But it does entail a personal guarantee. That program was originally designed to be that if there is a hurricane, a tornado somewhere, that the SBA, along with FEMA, could come into town quickly and get businesses back up and running. So employment would not leave the town. Obviously, what happened was they turned that on for the whole country. And you can imagine also that this is all run through the SBA, not through banks. You actually go on the SBA website to try to apply for these loans. When you do, you're getting in a queue. And that queue, we estimate, could be months. So
that's specific to the disaster.
Just the disaster loan recovery. Again, I want to point out some differences because I'm going to come back to it when we talk about payroll protection. 30-year loan, 3.75% interest, have to show a need, have to show actual damages, what you're applying for, and it does have some limitations. I believe it's by industry, but generally it's about a $2 or $3 million limitation on that loan.
Who should be looking at something like that? We're talking about restaurants now. What kind of restaurant would be looking at a loan such as that?
Generally, the businesses that I believe should be looking at disaster recovery are those businesses I would call asset heavy, employee light. And the payroll protection generally, and we'll talk about some exceptions in a moment, are those that are employee heavy and asset light. So if you think of asset heavy businesses, one that's been fairly successful more recently are those salons like Sola salons or Phoenix salons. where someone goes in and rents a large location and breaks it up into individual salons and then subleases it out. You think of that business, that individual might only have one or two employees. And then everybody, they're just leasing out to subtenants. Yet their business is 100% closed. So if you think of payroll protection, it's largely driven by what's your payroll. You're in essence going to get nothing. But if you went for disaster recovery, you could clearly show that the damages are my lost profits for this number of months. And so that's generally how I think of it. People do have to sit there and look at, can I effectively have the liquidity I need under a payroll protection loan versus maybe I get a 30-year loan over disaster recovery, and maybe it's material enough. So I think in large part it comes down to what are your damages. I do think if I was a restaurant that was only down in sales, let's say 30%, like many drive-throughs, it's definitely going to be payroll protection. If I'm a completely closed restaurant, 100% closed, and I don't see the future when I'm going to be able to reopen. The issue with the payroll protection loan is it only gets forgiven if you rehire. And you have to rehire 8 weeks after getting the funds. So you have this very short window. Otherwise, that loan is not forgiven. So we'll talk about the qualities of payroll protection, but if it's not forgiven, then all of a sudden you've gotten a loan that's due in 2 years versus a disaster recovery over 30. It is meant for you to get back into business. Under the payroll protection, I think what was most unique about it is it's the first loan ever. You don't have to show a need. You don't have to show a reason for even having it. You don't have to show that you can't get credit elsewhere. And you don't have to provide a personal guarantee. And you don't have to provide any collateral. So a very unique loan in that regard.
That sounds a lot like free money.
It is oftentimes almost advertised as free money.
Yeah.
My general view of this, as people think of these loans or anything out there, is to think of liquidity. I have a perspective. We're sitting here on April 9th as we do this interview, that this is going to last a while. And I think especially for restaurants, I think even if the government said by May 1st, we're kind of all back in business. Let's get back in business. I personally think in restaurants, I don't think the consumer is going to come flooding back in until either we, one, have a therapeutic drug that knocks us down such that people aren't worried about dying. One thing to be sick, it's quite another to die. Or we have a vaccine. And we all know vaccine's not going to happen anytime soon. And therefore, the hope is around a therapeutic. So given that, if that were to be the case, I think my advice to people would be, how do you think of liquidity over the next 6 months? And how do you get the funds, assuming you had a good business before this occurred, how do you get the funds to go from where we are today to where we need to be? I've just said, let's design plans to try to get us in the late summer, and then we'll have to all figure it out when we get to that point. So as I think through liquidity, the payroll protection program offers immediate liquidity. The reason for that is you actually go to a bank and apply. Essentially, because there's no collateral, because they don't have to show a need. If you think of what's the lender's due diligence, the only lender due diligence is they have to make sure you're real.
Yeah.
And to make sure you had a real business, you have real operating agreements, that whoever's signing has the authority to sign. And effectively, it goes back to know your customer. As long as they know their customer and they're not making a fraudulent loan, the government's going to buy that loan from them and is 100% guaranteeing satisfaction of that loan if the government doesn't buy it. So they know they're safe. I tend to think the money's going to start flowing pretty rapidly next week.
Let's talk about the scenarios where the money, the loan itself, won't be forgiven.
The loan sizing is based upon 2.5 times your average payroll prior to the virus. Now, only limitation within that is for individuals who were paid more than $100,000, employees or owner. You were paid more than $100,000. You can only put in $100,000 of your payroll. The other costs that are included in the loan sizing calculation was its salary, wages, commissions, employee benefits, including vacation, sick pay, retirement pays, healthcare benefits, all paid by the employer, and state and local taxes assessed on compensation. So this would not be state unemployment taxes, but if there are state taxes that the employer has to pay on compensation. So that's what's defined as payroll costs. What is not in there and what continues to create some confusion is there's no FICA in there, no Social Security, no Medicare payments. Those type of payments are not included in your payroll calculation. The loan forgiveness measurement is what did you do in the 8 weeks subsequent to receiving the loan? And it actually uses the term loan origination date. The date that loan's originated, the clock's ticking. For the next 8 weeks, all your payroll costs, again, same definition, plus utilities, plus rent, is the maximum loan that can be forgiven. So you actually have to incur cost in order to get this forgiven, and in those 3 buckets. And then the percentage of the maximum loan to be forgiven is based upon your FTEs of that 8-week period, in essence, versus the 8 weeks of the prior year.
So does that mean that during that 8 weeks, the people that had to close their restaurants, get rid of their employees, what are they to do in that 8 weeks?
So you can rehire. The government wants you to rehire.
But if you can't open the restaurant yet.
So David Barr's advice, I will go back to, is liquidity. The answer here is liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. So if the government's willing to give you this loan, so then let's talk about what happens if it's not forgiven. So you're going to fill out an application. If it's not forgiven, you then get 6-month deferment of no principal payment, and interest does accrue during that 6 months. So let's say roughly next December, you would have to make your first payment. The loan turns out to be a 2-year loan. So let's say someone gets their loan in May. In May 2022, the amounts are due. It accrues interest at 1% during that period of time, which is almost like free money. And I should add, the loan forgiveness amounts are tax-free. So that's another benefit. But yet, where I was going to comment here is you're effectively getting a 2-year loan, 1% interest. And I certainly am not saying people shouldn't repay the loan. I don't want you to hear that. However, if during the course of this time, as it's amortizing, you don't have the funds, what you have on your books is an unsecured loan with no personal guarantee. And I would recommend that the government wanted you to ultimately run a business and employ people. And so my recommendation would be as you effectively get open at some point in time, you would be repaying this loan. And to the extent you can't, you can't. But you don't have a personal guarantee on it. So why do I say all that? If I think of this, and I have some restaurants and gyms and salons personally that aren't going to be open. The government can give me money, but for me just to go hire people to effectively sit at home, I don't see how that helps them or me. Because what would be most beneficial to my employees, I believe, is that I have a long-term sustainable business. So I would intend to take that money, put it on my balance sheet. So let's say I got per unit just roughly $45,000. I would put $45,000 of cash on my balance sheet. I put $45,000 of debt. That's how I would think of it. I'd run the business the best I know how, and whatever gets forgiven gets forgiven. And if that means zero, that means zero. but then I have 45,000 more to reopen when it's appropriate.
That's so I guess that's the confusion. I think a lot of people are entering this going, I don't see how we're going to be operating in 8 weeks.
Right.
From the loan origination to actually having a working business and hiring those people back, it's not going to happen in 8 weeks. So what am I supposed to wait until it looks like I can open in 8 weeks, or do I just take the loan and see what happens?
Well, this was the difficulty, and SBA actually came out with guidance just last night on this, because some people were trying to look at, how do I go ahead and get authorized by SBA, authorized by the bank, and then just tell everyone, just hold, just wait. Then I'll take the loan in June, July. And then my 8-week measurement, because it's loan origination date, will make sense to me. Unfortunately, they came out with guidance yesterday that if you get an SBA authorization, you have to take funds within 10 days. But this is first come, first serve. And my recommendation is take the liquidity. It's a 1% loan. It's unsecured, no personal guarantee. I would take the liquidity all day long, run the business the best you know how, and let it play out. I don't know what that means on how this is ultimately going to play out.
So your advice is don't let that 8 weeks scare you from just standing in line, going through the process, get the loan.
There's no principal payment due. Probably most people aren't going to get a loan at this point till May-ish. So you have no principal due till November. There's no prepayment penalty. If ultimately you took this loan and you said, you got all the way into the fall and you said, it's just not enough money, I can't reopen, whatever decisions you made that you said, I just don't need this money, pay it back. What I'd hate to find is someone sitting there going, wow, I wish I had $45,000 more dollars and I could really be up and running and back in business. Because I think the lending market's going to change as a result of all this as well. If you think about every crisis that you went through as a small business person, liquidity mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have liquidity, it makes a difference. So my advice is just focus on liquidity. Get as much of it as you can.
One of the other questions that one of my friends had was, is there a relationship or an impact, this $10,000 kind of immediate part of the disaster loan recovery process? Is it one or the other?
Yeah, if you get the $10,000 immediate, it's actually deducted from your loan sizing in the payroll protection program.
Okay, so you can just do that quickly.
Right. There are individuals who've gone out and gotten, small businesses that I've talked to, gotten over $1 million in disaster recovery. Now, what's interesting is this law was first written, the payroll protection, it said you couldn't do both. You had to do one or the other. And literally in the last change, one of the last changes to the CARES Act, I know within the last 48 hours before passage, they changed that. And they said you can do a disaster loan recovery first, but if you have it, you have to roll it into your loan and their payroll protection. And that was trying to capture all those people who had already done that and rolled in. Now, if you think of it, what you're doing then is taking a 30-year loan and turning it into a 2-year loan. It's distinctly different as I talk about liquidity. Again, I go back to the key point everyone needs to think about is liquidity. And if you do the math under either one and said, what is my maximum liquidity next fall? That's what I would focus on. You're not going to truly know your forgiveness, though, until probably about 12 weeks after loan origination, maybe even a little more. But I think as I've worked with people, my general thought is they've overanalyzed the forgiveness. Because they sit there and they go, okay, what if I hired this 2 people and that 3 people and that 4 people? You just got to get the liquidity. You got to back up the truck and get as much money as you can. There, I will highlight, and I'm not giving counsel as what to do or not do, but I will highlight some things that become quite obvious. The law does not say you have to hire the same employees. The law compares FTEs to FTEs. if someone had a large family of children of age, working age, let's say they had 4 children, that can be 4 FTEs. So, and I say that for the uniquely small businesses, that there's no guidance and there's no legality yet, and I doubt there will be, on who you have to hire or who you cannot hire. So I say that because if you truly had a smaller business, 1 unit of something, and 4 FTEs could make a huge difference as you think through that. If you're truly a small business with maybe only 10, 15 employees, and you obtain this loan, and your revenue was down, therefore your employment was down, but you had some employment, and you all of a sudden had 4 family members that joined the payroll that previously weren't, you paid them minimum wage for 30 hours, that's 4 or 5 FTEs, and can make a difference on the loan forgiveness. And again, I'm not providing legal advice, but I've not seen any guidance that is SBA is restricting who you have to hire. It's very clear you don't have to hire the same people you once had.
All right, man. Listen, I know you're a busy guy. I can't thank you enough for taking the amount of time that you did. Yeah, appreciate you kind of hanging out and sharing your wisdom and your resources. And chances are we'll do this again at some point.
We'd love that. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. And best wishes to everyone out there.